What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And as always, we have ourselves a lot of volleyball to get into, as there was a lot happening last week in not just college volleyball, but pro volleyball as well, as Penn State taking down No.1 Ohio State not once, but twice last week. How did those Nittany Lions do it in a Big Ten battle? Also, how about UC Santa Barbara taking down number 2 UCLA on the road? Are those Gauchos getting better and better? And what happened to UCLA? And how about CSUN, the Matadors taking down number 11 USC at the Galen Center? We also had other upsets in terms of unranked upsets, taking down ranked teams such as Lincoln Memorial, protecting the home court and taking down number 19 Charleston. And how about LIU taking down number 12 Lewis on the road? Also, Pro Volleyball Federation had its inaugural week last week, as it was one to remember. We had 5 setters, we had familiar NCAA women's volleyball players, and a whole lot more. So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon, Monday morning, Monday evening, Monday wherever you are listening from. Either way, you've made your way into episode 231 of Set Point. And without any further delay, let us begin. But first and foremost, Set Point would not be where it's at without IE Sports Radio providing the platform to go live on Spreaker. Please do follow IE Sports Radio on several different social media platforms such as X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, and on TikTok at IE Sports Radio. We also have a Facebook page for those that still use it, as all you just have to do is type in the word IE Sports and Radio in the search bar, like us, and follow us, and that's how you're able to do so. We also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, that is still getting the bugs worked out, but it's definitely still up there and ready to be viewed. And we have all of your latest sports news, our blog, our Hall of Fame, our Fans of the Month, our page dedicated to each podcast, our community forum, and our merchandise shop. For the last 9 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Thank you to everyone for all of your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that sports. A huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, the single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, it's low in sugar, and high in protein. This is some of the best jerky you can get your hands on, and all you have to do is visit www.planetjerky.net and place your order. In addition, prices are slashed for the most part, and if you buy $50 worth or more on planetjerky.net, you will get your order, in terms of shipping, for free. Once again, a huge shout out to our sponsor, Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. And the way you can follow Set Point on social media is on X, formerly known as Twitter, at set_point.ie, and on Instagram at set_point.iesr. You can follow me, Teran Rodriguez, on X, which is where I'm mainly active, at Teran Rodriguez1. And also, just to plug this in as well, my new project for Set Point on IE Sports Radio has launched, as it's going to be called Set Point Extra Points, where I'm going to try to have, I'm hoping this is a weekly thing, as I hope I can have like one coach or player, as my first guest was Nick England, the owner of the San Diego Wild, so definitely check that out. Now let's get on into the NCAA men's volleyball action, as there was a lot that happened, as it all started on Monday with number 14 Princeton taking on BYU at Provo. before we get on into it, thank you to Ralph Calise and Jen B for being in the chat room. Ralph Calise says, good afternoon. Have a great show, Teran. Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. And Jen B says, hey, Teran, have a great show. So excited about the Pro Volleyball Federation. I am too. We'll save that for a little bit later, but right now, let's get on into some NCAA men's volleyball. As apologies if you're listening live if I started late. I had some other things that happened, and unfortunately I ran into a delay, but I'm here now. And if you're listening on the playback, disregard that message. All right, number 14 Princeton took on number 8 BYU, and BYU protected its home court not once, but twice as they swept Princeton. So my takeaway for both those matches is BYU is just a cut above the rest for the most part, and it kind of shows that they have a good amount of returning players. Now, Princeton, I wouldn't say they were bad, but it kind of shows that playing in Provo at Smith Fieldhouse is one of the toughest places to win at. So for Princeton, there's nothing to be ultimately ashamed, and this is kind of the tail end of the West Coast road trip. So I imagine Sam Schweisky's team is super gassed, but thankfully they'll have some home matches, which is definitely good for the Tigers. And I know Sam Schweisky wanted his West Coast road trip to go a little bit smoother, but he can't complain too much with some of the progress they made. He took a set off of UC Irvine on the road, and then they obviously battled with BYU, but unfortunately it was to no avail. But I think for Princeton, they definitely can make noise in the EIVA. But for BYU, this just goes to show that Smith Fieldhouse is one of the toughest places to win at in volleyball history. Whether it's an NCAA women's volleyball or NCAA men's volleyball, Smith Fieldhouse is such a tough place to win at. So there was that matchup right there. Then we jumped to Wednesday, and oh man, I did not expect this. We had number 18 CSUN knocking off number 11 USC. So USC got off to a good start. They took that first set 25-21. Didn't have too many problems. And then set 2, they actually had their opportunities to win. I think they were up 23-21, and then unfortunately they just could not hold on to the lead. And if I recall correctly, USC had a set point opportunity, but unfortunately they just could not convert as CSUN took that second set 27-25. 16 ties in that second set. And then in set 3, CSUN was able to take that 25-20 as it was kind of a battle for the most part, but CSUN was able to get ahead of the Trojans and stay ahead. Then in set 4, USC was able to ride the momentum. They knew that they didn't want to lose in 4 on their home floor as they took that fourth set 25-17. And then in set 5, it was mostly all CSUN. CSUN just jumped out to an early lead and never looked back as the Matadors took that fifth set 15-10, completing the upset over USC. And this is kind of what I said to Jeff Nygaard in that little interview after his team's match against Ohio State, that the Big West is stacked from top to bottom. It's not just Long Beach State, Hawaii, and UC Irvine, but CSUN is improved. They returned a good amount of players. They didn't lose anyone too big. UC Santa Barbara has a good young core, and then UC San Diego, while they're young, they still have some experience. They didn't lose anyone too big outside of Ryan Kaw. So for CSUN, they were led by Kyle Hobus, who had 23 kills, while Jalen Phillips added 14 kills and Griffin Walters added 8 kills. CSUN hit 345 for the match, as USC was led by Dylan Klein and Jack Ducher, who both had 17 kills. Wes Smith had 5 kills, but that's kind of where the buck stopped, as Ducher and Klein both were kind of the catalyst. They didn't really have that third option, which is a huge problem. And it sucks because I thought Wes Smith did so great at the First Point Collegiate Challenge that maybe they'd go to him more. But unfortunately, it was Ducher and Klein who had to carry the team, which is definitely not ideal. And you also have your other middle in Kyle Paulson. You got to use him to the best of your ability, as Josh Friedman actually got to see some action. Both setters actually played 4 sets, as Caleb Blanchette had 29 assists, Josh Friedman had 10 assists. So my takeaway for USC is this. This was definitely not an ideal loss for them. Obviously, losing to Ohio State kind of was a little bit better than losing to the likes of CSUN, because at least when you lose to Ohio State, they were coming off of a 5-set win over then number 1 UCLA. But as for CSUN, not for anything, but I thought USC could have definitely won this one. But this just goes to show that CSUN, or Cal State Northridge, definitely has a lot more experience in terms of returning players. And then USC, they lost a good amount of their players from last year, but all in all, for the Trojans, I really think that this was a little bit of a slap in the face for them. And here's hoping for their sake they can turn it around, because I definitely did not expect this. I knew they were going to get some sort of battle, but honestly, if they're struggling against CSUN, I don't know if they can handle the likes of UC Irvine in a couple more weeks, because that team is definitely on. I think they've rediscovered their A game. Heading to Thursday's matchup, we had another Big West Conference team knocking off a MPSF team, as we had number 17 UC Santa Barbara knocking off number 2 UCLA at Pauley Pavilion in 5 sets, 30-28, 23-25, 25-23, 23-25, and 15-13. All of the sets were decided by 2 points, which is definitely incredible. And the Gauchos in the first set, they actually had to dig their way out of a little bit of a deficit, as they really turned it around in the later stages of that first set, as they turned the tables, they did not deter despite facing the number 2 team in the nation on the road, as the Gauchos took that first set. And then it looked like UC Santa Barbara was going to take set 2, but UCLA was able to hold on and turn the tables as they took that second set 25-23. And then the same can be said for Santa Barbara. They held off a late comeback from the Bruins as they took that third set 25-23. And same can be said for the fourth set. UCLA looked like they were going to be cruising fairly easily to that fourth set win, but Santa Barbara just really made it tough for them. So Bruins eventually took that one, and then the fifth set, Santa Barbara never trailed in that set as they got off to a very fast start in a 3-0 lead. And again, they never trailed, but UCLA really did not want to lose. But unfortunately, it was too little too late. UC Santa Barbara broke a 13-13 tie, and they won off a walk-off service ace from Sam Collins. He had 3 aces on the night as Guest Bianchi led the way with 27 kills. Patrick Kane had 14 kills, and Owen Berg had 11 kills. UC Santa Barbara hit 293, and despite UCLA hitting 331, UCLA did not come out on top, as the Bruins were led by Alex Knight, who had 16 kills. Merrick McHenry had 10 kills. Guy Guinness had 9 kills. Andrew Rowan had 56 assists and 3 service aces, and he also had 9 digs to lead that department. So, oh, by the way, Bianchi had 11 digs. So my takeaway for the Gauchos is this. It's about time they had themselves a big breakout win. After losing twice to Stanford and falling to the likes of BYU, they finally get themselves a huge quality win. And this just goes to show that UCLA definitely has, UC Santa Barbara has a lot of upside to their team. They got players like Josh Aruya, who is starting at middle. We got Sam Meester, who is in the rotation. Jack Walmer, he had himself a great game at setter. He had 3 aces, 9 digs. For UCLA, I thought this was such a disappointing loss for them, especially at home. Now, I totally get it. They might still be under the hangover effects from the Ohio State loss, but this is kind of no excuse. You now are facing some quality competition, and I wouldn't call UC Santa Barbara quality, but they're still a young and feisty team. And UCLA is still the reigning NCAA champion, so that target on their back is going to get bigger and bigger. And here's the other thing for UCLA. If they're struggling against UC Santa Barbara, just like with CSUN, or with USC with CSUN, then I don't know what UCLA is going to do this week against UC Irvine, and then next week against Long Beach State. Because I think Irvine, like I said earlier, they've rediscovered their mojo. And for Long Beach State, they're coming off of a very nice win against Pepperdine, which everyone thought that was going to be a little bit of a barn burner, including myself. And that was kind of a little bit of a highly anticipated matchup. But for UCLA, them losing to a team that was projected to finish 4th in a 6-team conference, it's a little mind-boggling. But it just goes to show that UCLA is human. They're not a machine that's going to be sweeping away everybody and going undefeated up until maybe like conference play. But now, UCLA, I hope this is their true official wake-up call, because I said in their loss against Ohio State where they got reverse swept at First Point Collegiate Challenge, that was their wake-up call. This loss has to be their wake-up call, because if they play like this, UC Irvine could potentially beat them, at least at the Brent Event Center, because that's actually going to be the first match at Brent Event Center for UC Irvine this year, as the previous matches that they played at home were in the Crawford Hall. And obviously, UC Irvine is going to be facing its former coach in John Spera, and David Niffin's going to have his boys ready. And I think they have their setter figured out in Brett Sheward, so we'll see what happens then. Next up, we have this matchup, and I did not expect this. Number 9 Penn State took down number 1 Ohio State at the Covalli Center in 4 sets. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer. Ohio State actually did not have Jacob Pastore, as he had a lower body injury. Now, I did not know of this lower body injury, but that might have been the reason why he wasn't overly explosive in that matchup against USC last weekend. But not having Jacob Pastore really hurt, as Penn State took the first set 25-21. There were actually 17 ties and 6 lead changes, and Penn State was able to hold on and win that set on the road. Then Ohio State didn't have too much trouble, won that second set 25-21. Then Penn State won the third set 25-19, as they had a little to no trouble in that set. And then the fourth set, it looked like Ohio State was going to win that set and push it to 5. And this is where they really missed Jacob Pastore. They had, I want to say, 2 set points, but they couldn't convert. And then eventually Penn State converted and won that fourth set 29-27. Penn State had 4 different players in double digits in kills, as Toby Ezionu led the way with 14 kills. He hit 500. He also had 3 blocks. Michael Valenzi had 13 kills. He hit 379. John Kerr, 12 kills, as well as 12 digs. And then Mihal Kowal had 10 kills to go along with 7 digs. Penn State did pretty decent in terms of digs. If it weren't for Ohio State having 50, I would say that Penn State pretty much had that category locked up. Both teams did not serve the ball well, as Penn State actually had 3 more service errors than Ohio State, while both teams actually had 3 service aces as a whole. Ohio State, without Jacob Pastore, was led by Daniel Hurley, who had 16 kills, while Ben Putnam had 10 kills. Shane Wetzel also had 8 kills, and Cole Young had 6 kills. And my takeaway for Ohio State is this. They hit 200 in the match. This just goes to show how valuable Jacob Pastore is. Without Jacob Pastore, Ohio State cannot compete with the likes of anybody in the top 10. And that's no disrespect to Kevin Birch and his team. I think that Ohio State really needed Jacob Pastore, but having a lower body injury does not help you in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, without Jacob Pastore, they just don't look like the Ohio State that beat UCLA. Because Jacob Pastore had to literally carry Ohio State to victory. Because I was literally seeing Ohio State in that match against UCLA. It was against UCLA. It was just set Jacob, set Jacob, set Jacob, set Jacob for like a majority of the set. Like sometimes we would see Ben Putnam or the middles get some swings, or Shane Wetzel get some swings, but it was just mainly set Jacob. Jacob Pastore was literally wanting to will Ohio State to the win over UCLA. And for good reason. It just goes to show he's a winner and a gamer and a baller and a player. And also, it just goes to show that there's a reason why he was named MIVA preseason conference player of the year. So, again, no Jacob Pastore. Ohio State just looks like a cracked mirror. It doesn't look like the same. For Penn State, my takeaway for them is this. This was the win that they needed. And I'm not just saying the win just because it's Ohio State. But this is a definite rivalry match. And this is why we need more coverage of NCAA men's volleyball. The number 1 and number 2 team fell on that same day on Thursday. Why not promote more NCAA men's volleyball like we do with NCAA women's volleyball? Yes, I get it. Shorter rallies, more missed serves, not a whole lot of digs, blasting kills. But still, it deserves the recognition like NCAA women's volleyball does and women's volleyball does in general. The fact that we don't get a whole lot of NCAA men's volleyball coverage on national TV is ridiculous. I just don't approve of it. And Penn State was the reason why... Penn State and UC Santa Barbara was the reason why I think we need more NCAA men's volleyball coverage on national TV. Jumping over to Friday and heading back to Provo, we have number 7 UC Irvine knocking off number 8 BYU. The first set went BYU's way, winning it 25-22. And then UC Irvine looks like they were in a little bit of danger in that second set, but they took it 27-25. They had to stave off a late comeback from the Cougars. Then in set 3, the Anteaters got their you-know-what together as they took that third set 25-18. And then in set 4, UC Irvine never trailed as they were able to somewhat cruise to victory in that fourth set, winning it 25-20. As UC Irvine was led by Halir Henno, who had 20 kills, only one hitting hair for a hitting percentage of 500. Maxim Grigoriev had 16 kills, while Nolan Flexen had 12 kills. And then Grigoriev and Cole Power both had 10 digs. And Brett Sheward, he's setting that offense up for success. He had 48 assists. UCI had 9 service aces, and they missed 18 serves, but I really think that the service aces really helped balance that out, as Connor Dahm had 5 kills to go along with 4 service aces, and Nolan Flexen also added 3 aces, which is definitely something worth noting, and it's definitely ideal for the likes of UC Irvine, who really serves tough. For BYU, they were led by Trent Moser, who had 15 kills, while Luke Benson had 10 kills. The alarming thing was Mix Romanis only played 3 sets, and he only had 6 kills. My takeaway for BYU is this. I feel Mix Romanis is kind of that it guy. I know BYU loves to have multiple players that are big time. They don't like to have just a number 1 guy, but I feel with Mix Romanis not being the it guy and not playing a whole lot, as Mix Romanis only played 3 sets, it kind of concerns me, as also BYU did get outdug, though they did outblock UC Irvine by 12.5 compared to 7.5. But BYU losing at home, it's a little bit of a rare sight to see. And I'm just going to say that in a respectful way, because I don't think BYU is bad. I mean, I just think UC Irvine is slightly better because they have a lot of returning experience on their team. And with Halir Henno playing that the way that he did, with hitting 500, I don't think UC Irvine's going to be losing a match like that, even if it is in one of the tougher places to win at in volleyball history. Next up, we have number 10 Pepperdine hitting the road to the 5-6-2 to take on number 3 Long Beach State, and this was nothing what I expected. I remember everyone and their moms saying, we want to see Long Beach State and Pepperdine face one another. Every NCAA men's volleyball fan or men's volleyball fan in general want to see Long Beach State versus Pepperdine face off against one another. And it was the first time that these two faced off against one another since 2020, before the pandemic. And I'm just going to say, I was ultimately surprised at how Long Beach State just dominated. They swept Pepperdine, and swept isn't even the right word. They just crushed them. 25-19, 25-13, and 25-21. Long Beach State, in the first set, they actually were neck and neck with Pepperdine, but then they got some good separation in terms of tough serves and great blocks at the net. Long Beach State had 15 blocks compared to Pepperdine's 5. You're going to be winning a whole lot of games with that amount of blocks. And also, it didn't help Pepperdine that they missed so many serves. I want to say they missed 7 in set 1. They missed 18 overall. It won't get the job done. Like I said, there's more missed serves in NCAA men's volleyball or men's volleyball in general, but you just can't have that number just balloon so much. Because Long Beach State only missed 10 serves, and they had 7 aces of their own. And then Pepperdine definitely got outdug 28-22, and they only hit 105. As Cole Kachansky, yes, his name is pronounced Kachansky. I've been mispronouncing it terribly. As Cole Kachansky led the way with 10 kills for Pepperdine. Long Beach State was led by Clark Godbold, who had 11 kills. He hit 476. And then Sotiris Shapanis had 6 kills, and he hit 313. Only 1 hitting error. Long Beach State didn't even need a monster night in terms of offense, as Pepperdine actually had more kills than Long Beach State, but Long Beach State hit an efficient 288. And Lazar Buchkov had 4 kills, he hit 667, and he had 10 blocks for the entire night. 10 blocks in a 3-set win. And he's only a freshman, mind you, so, ooh man. My takeaway for Long Beach State is this. They needed to prove themselves, and I think they passed the eye test with flying colors. So anyone that wants to say Long Beach State is not battle-tested, well, this was their first true match, and again, with how they had to go forward with NJIT, St. Francis, and George Mason, I kind of was a little concerned going into this match, but the fact that they came back to the Pyramid, they managed to take care of business. They also took care of business against Concordia Irvine, and let's just say that match was no closer than this match. For Pepperdine, my takeaway for them is this: they kind of needed a slap in the face. Pepperdine was facing its true first test, and I wouldn't say this is a bad loss. Obviously, Long Beach State is indeed a top 3 team. So for Long Beach State, I don't think this is necessarily a bad loss for Pepperdine. However, it just goes to show that this is some of the top-tier opponents that they're going to be facing. And again, this is no discredit to Pepperdine. I think they have a lot of good players, but they just need to get everyone on the same page and get everybody accustomed to some of the tough competition, because Long Beach State's kind of going to be the equivalent of facing the likes of maybe GCU or for sure UCLA or Stanford. USC could probably get their stuff together. And BYU, can't forget about them. And maybe Concordia Irvine, but they're still trying to figure things out without Yuri Batista. Heading down to Saturday's matchups, we head down to the DMV, as we had this little matchup right here, as actually it wasn't the DMV, it was actually Music City. It was actually the Music State, as we had Lincoln Memorial taking on number 19 Charleston. And I actually did not have this on my radar, as it's Drewski, the host of our Dallas-Fort Worth show on iSports Radio, pops in the chat room. He says, "Good afternoon, Teran, have a great show." And yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to link up at the DFW. Oh, man. It just feels like my time here in Texas just basically went by so quickly, with me going to Austin and me having to hang out with my brother and having to do all these other errands. And I feel horrible, but it is what it is. If only the Dallas Cowboys had won on their divisional matchup, but I digress. So, Lincoln Memorial versus Charleston. This was a matchup, as the Rail Splitters took the first set 25-22, and not to confuse the LMU with the Lions in Los Angeles compared to the LMU and Lincoln Memorial, but Lincoln Memorial took that first set 25-22, Charleston took that second set 25-19, and then LMU took that third set 25-16, and the fourth set, Charleston did not want to go down, as they actually came into this match undefeated. They took the fourth set 25-21, and then LMU, those gritty little Rail Splitters, took that fifth set 15-12. As I don't know if you all know this, but LMU, or Lincoln Memorial, has the longest home win streak in NCAA men's volleyball, at least in Division 1-2, as they have won 30 consecutive home games dating back to 2021. I was unaware of that, but I was also unaware of this matchup just because I didn't think Charleston would struggle this much. Because Charleston, if you look at their schedule on paper, they don't have the strongest schedule. And that's because they graduated so much of their team from last season. As the Rail Splitters were led by Justin Scharfenaker, who had 13 kills, while Matthew Gentry and Griffin Wheatley both had 11 kills, and Shea Spadaro had 10 kills. As a team, LMU hit 315, and they barely outblocked their opponent 10.5 to 9. They did get outdug, and they didn't really win the service ace, service error battle, but they did have 6 aces. They missed 24 serves, but Charleston also missed 20 serves, and LMU held Charleston to 225, as the Golden Eagles were led by Jesse Ross Delancey, who had 19 kills. He had 452. Garrett Schnitker also added 11 kills. That's kind of where the buck stops, as they didn't really have anyone with no more than 5 kills, which was Jake Cousins. My takeaway for the Rail Splitters is this: they got him. They got that 30th consecutive home win, and this, I wouldn't say this is going to shake the standings, but I'm just going to say, and this is probably not going to put them in terms of the NCAA tournament, but I'm just ultimately impressed by Lincoln Memorial. Yes, this is probably one of the few times they've beaten a ranked opponent at home, but honestly, good for them. My takeaway for Charleston is this. This just goes to show how hard they were hit in terms of graduation. You can't really ultimately defend this too much, as I know LMU has won 30 in a row, but Charleston, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time this season. Again, if you look at their schedule, it's not the strongest schedule, and if they struggle with this matchup, I don't know if they could really survive against the big dogs in the EIVA. Heck, NJIT is actually playing better, and so might be Harvard. So all in all for Charleston, I wouldn't say this is a bad loss, but this just goes to show that Charleston no longer deserves to be ranked. Next up, we head to Romeoville as we have this little matchup. Number 12 Lewis taking on LIU, and this was baffling if you ask me. I did not expect this, as LIU took down Lewis in 4. LIU took the first two sets, 25-21 and 25-23. Then in set number 3, 12 ties, but Lewis held on to extend the match, taking it 25-23. And then LIU, despite having 11 ties in that fourth set, they took that fourth set 25-22. And ladies and gentlemen, we got them. LIU got their first ever ranked win. That is LIU's first ever ranked win in program history. Cale Spencer and Livon Moreno both led the way for LIU with 13 kills. Gio Colazzo had 12 kills. I know LIU only hit 255, but it's better than Lewis's 194. And they definitely outblocked Lewis 15.5 to 5.5, which that's almost tripling the block total from what Lewis had. I know they got outdug by 5, but they had 52 digs, with Colazzo leading the way with 13 of them. And LIU had 7 aces. I know they missed 20 serves, but Lewis only had 4 aces, and they missed 13 serves. Christian Prayer led Lewis with 16 kills, while Max Roque had 11 kills, and Syver Drolsum added 10 kills. Nico Paula led Lewis in the dig department with 14, while Prayer had 12 digs, and Tyler Morgan had 11 digs to go along with 37 assists. So my takeaway for LIU is this: man, they needed a win like this, because LIU is a program that's on the rise. They're not the most attractive program like Long Beach State, UCLA, Penn State, you name it. But LIU needed a ranked win in such a big way, and they proved themselves, not just against a ranked opponent, but against a ranked opponent on the road. And it just goes to show that those previous matches against Long Beach State and other ranked teams just paved the way for this matchup. And LIU winning on the road is incredible. And the fact that this was their first ever ranked win is definitely set point, tip of the cap worthy. For Lewis, this really kind of reinforces new narratives about them. I don't know how to defend this. Lewis goes from beating BYU to now losing to LIU. And also, you got to remember, they pushed UCLA to 4 sets. And they could have possibly beaten UCLA, if not pushed them to 5. Now I have this whole confusion of who Lewis is, as they went from being a sneakily good team in MIVA play to now I don't know if they could survive against the likes of Ohio State or Loyola or Ball State, because you can't have this loss. And this is nothing against LIU, but losing against a team that had not won against a ranked opponent in program history at home, that's very concerning for Lewis. And maybe they just didn't, it was an off night for them. But they beat George Mason the night prior. So I don't understand how Lewis has this type of loss. It just makes little to no sense if you're Lewis. And if they struggle, like I've been saying with some of these other teams in conference play, if Lewis struggles against LIU, I don't know if they could survive in the likes of MIVA play, because the MIVA is getting so much better. They're for sure making the tournament, but I am not sure if they're going to go deep in that tournament. They'd be lucky to get 1 win. Circling the wagons back to Provo, we had number 7 UC Irvine defeating number 8 BYU, this time in 5 sets, as BYU took the opening set 25-23, and then the Anteaters responded by taking a narrow set to 26-24. And then the Anteaters didn't have too much trouble. They never trailed in set 3 as they took that set 25-18. And then it looked like UC Irvine was going to possibly win that 4th set, but BYU said no. We're going to a 5th set as they eventually snapped the 16-16 tie and took that 4th set 25-23. Then in set 5, looked like BYU was going to had the upper hand, but errors kept getting in the way of the Cougars as the Anteaters eventually held on, won that 5th set 15-13 as they won not once, but twice in Smith Fieldhouse. As the Anteaters were led by Nolan Flexen, who had 18 kills, while Maxim Grigoriev and Hilir Heno both had 15 kills. My takeaway for UC Irvine is this: they hit 308. That's very tough to do in terms of playing at Smith Fieldhouse against BYU. And they also outblocked their opponent, get this, 19-8. They doubled up and then some in terms of blocks against BYU. They were throwing a block party in the Smith Fieldhouse. I know the serves did not go UC Irvine's way as they had only 4 aces and missed 24 serves. But when you're doing other good stats well, like playing really good offense and your block is just on point, as Connor Campbell had 8 blocks altogether, I think that really makes UC Irvine a dangerous team. And I think Hilir Heno has his new left-hand man in Nolan Flexen, or right-hand man, depending on what hand Hilir Heno is more dominant in. But Nolan Flexen leading the way takes so much pressure off of Hilir Heno, because Hilir Heno doesn't have to carry the team 9 in and 9 out. Now I really wonder, can UC Irvine actually beat UCLA? Because I know UCLA did beat UC San Diego after they lost to UC Santa Barbara, but I don't know. I still have my doubts. At least they'll probably win at Brent Event Center, but time will tell. For BYU, they were led by Luke Benson, who had 21 kills. Mix Romanis had 16 kills. Gavin Julian and Ian Little both had 7 kills. But BYU only hit a dismal 168. So my takeaway for BYU is this: outside of blocks and the offensive stats, BYU didn't really dominate the categories, didn't dominate too many categories. And the fact that there was only 1 lead change in set 2 shows that UC Irvine is definitely a team to contend with. And I think that loss to George Mason was just George Mason having more experience, while UC Irvine was going in cold turkey, not even knowing who their starting setter was going to be between Joe Carlos and Brett Sheward. So I definitely have to give a massive tip of the cap to UC Irvine, because winning at Smith Fieldhouse is no easy feat. And if it weren't for another team that beat another number 1 team this week, I think I would have picked UC Irvine as my team of the week, because it's definitely not easy beating BYU at Smith Fieldhouse. Now they have a lot of momentum going into this series against UCLA, and that's going to be a barn burner. Larry B pops in the chat room. He says, "What's up, T-Rod?" Hey, Larry B. Glad you're able to pop in for a bit. Now we go to Sunday's matchups. And, ladies and gentlemen, we got him again. Number 9 Penn State defeated number 1 Ohio State again. But this time, it wasn't in 4 sets. They actually had to win in 5, but it wasn't how they won. It wasn't them beating Ohio State in 5. It was how they won in 5. This was in Rec Hall, by the way, and Penn State reverse swept Ohio State 23-25, 22-25, 25-21, 25-18, and 17-15. It was that match, as Ohio State did see the return of Jacob Pasteur, but he was certainly not his dominant self, as he also had 12 hitting errors. He hit 100. Pasteur had 16 kills, which was a bright spot, but he also missed 10 service errors, which just goes to show that Jacob Pasteur is not 100%. And Penn State needed a little bit of a stave-off moment, because they're actually trailing for a good portion of that 5th set, but they managed to turn the tide late in that 5th set once they got into the quote-unquote red zone, which I think is 10 points in set 5 and 20 points in sets 1 through 4. And the fact that Penn State was able to pull out that comeback win was amazing. And the thing about Penn State was they actually ran a 6-2 offense. Instead of having Michael Schwob run the offense, they actually had Luke Snyder step in and set the offense as well. And I think Luke Snyder is one of the experienced setters for Penn State. They also have Josh Rosenblum, who's like 6'7", who transferred from Long Beach State, but it is what it is. Whatever Mark Pavlik did worked, as Penn State was led by Mihal Kowal, who had 15 kills. Michael Valenzi had 14 kills, and Toby Izionu had 10 kills. Both teams had 38 digs, as Penn State hit 282, while Ohio State hit 230. Both teams had 7 service aces, and they were nearly identical in missed serves, as Penn State had 27 missed serves, and Ohio State had 26. Ohio State outblocked Penn State 10.5 to 10, which is quite close if you ask me. And Ohio State, the big difference was in sets 3, 4, and 5, they hit under 100. In sets 1 and 2, Ohio State hit over 500. Massive difference, as Penn State just really came alive, as they knew they wanted to defend home court. They knew when they said, we're down 0-2, we do not want to lose to this Big Ten opponent. And honestly, I will say this, Penn State, I think, really proved a lot this week. I think that was just one bad weekend that they had, and I think that was kind of the wake-up call that they needed, because UCLA and Stanford are both really good contender teams. Ohio State is also a good contender team, but it just showed that Jacob Pastor was not at 100%, and it showed in his numbers. 12 hitting errors, 10 service errors, a hitting percentage of 100. Jacob Pastor was not his big self. So, all in all, I will say it was a tough week for Ohio State. They have to get Jacob Pastor healthy. And you know what's worse? They kick off MIVA play this week, and it's certainly not going to be easy, to say the least. And Ohio State, if I recall correctly, they do not play Loyola. Bully for them. So they have a week or so to get Jacob Pastor healthy, so we'll see what happens with them. But Penn State really proved themselves this week, and I was ultimately impressed with the Nittany Lions, and I think this was the week that they needed after that ugly week against UCLA and... I accidentally hit my mic, I apologize, but against UCLA and Stanford. And then last of the match to thoroughly recap, is Hawaii versus Ball State. Now, Hawaii had played 2 matches prior, and I kind of got to backtrack from what I said last week. I called Purdue-Fort Wayne in West Lafayette. That is not true. And honestly, they're actually in Fort Wayne. They're not in... Purdue-Fort Wayne is in Fort Wayne, not in West Lafayette. I got them confused with Purdue University, the Boilermakers. I'm talking about the Mastodons here. But Hawaii took down Purdue-Fort Wayne on Thursday and Friday, and then Sunday they had this matchup against Ball State. It's a great matchup in all honesty, as Hawaii took the first set 25-23. Now, they didn't trail, but Ball State was not letting them off the hook that easily. And the same could be said for the second set, as Ball State never trailed in set 2, but Hawaii was not going to let Ball State off the hook that easily, as they actually won that second set 25-23, as the match was even at 1-1. And this just goes to show that every point, every inch is so crucial in the game of volleyball, as you never know who goes on that serving run, you never know who goes on that scoring run altogether. But after that second set, Hawaii just turned it on. They took the third set 25-21. Didn't have too much trouble, as the fourth set was also all Hawaii for the most part, as they took that 25-19 in the match. Hawaii was led by Spiros Hakas, who had 14 kills, while Alakai Todd had 12 kills. Chaz Galloway had 10 kills, as he hit 474, and Guillerme Voss had 9 kills, as he had no hitting errors, and he hit 900 for the match. Hawaii as a whole hit 366, and that is despite Ball State hitting 333. The Cardinals were led by Tanashi Indava-Zocheva, who had 16 kills, along with Braden Savitsky Lind, who also had 16 kills. The scary thing is that Ball State actually had a couple of guys stand out in terms of the hitting percentage, as Patrick Rogers had 13 kills. He hit 478. Savitsky Lind had a hitting percentage of 355. Will Patterson had 6 kills for a hitting percentage of 364. Ball State, like I said, they hit 333. They actually outdug the Rainbow Warriors 36-28, and they outblocked their opponent 13-11.5. The only problem is that Hawaii out-aced them 9-4, and they barely got out. And they also won the service error battle, as they only had 11 service errors. If Hawaii has only 11 service errors and they have 9 service aces, that's what makes Hawaii such a dangerous team this season. Everyone's thinking they lost Jakob Tele. They're going to regress. No. They have Tread Rosenthal, and he's getting better as the matches go by, as the season goes by. And their offense is still as hot as ever, with all these players like Spiros Hakas, Alakai Todd getting into the fold, Chaz Galloway, Guillerme Voss rules the middle, Kurt Nerster, he also is a key contributor, and Louis Sakanoko, he'll soon eventually be in the fold as well. So Hawaii, in my opinion, they're definitely going to be pulling off some upsets. And if they're an underdog, they're going to be the scariest underdog they can be. And for Ball State, my takeaway is this. I feel they didn't play bad in this match. Obviously, when you out-hit Hawaii, you out-block Hawaii, and you out-dig Hawaii, that's a good thing. But Hawaii just had the answers in terms of everything and anything possible for Ball State, even on the road. So I'll just say this about Ball State. They're getting better, especially since Tanashi Ndava-Zocheva is only in his second week back with Ball State. The first week was back in the First Point Collegiate Challenge against USC and Stanford. But Ball State, I thought, did a whole lot better. But unfortunately, they're going to have to they need to get a whole lot better sooner rather than later, because this week they actually open up MIVA conference play at home against Loyola. And to make matters worse, they also play Penn State, who is coming off those big wins against Ohio State. So Ball State better be tweaking all of its mistakes, otherwise Ball State could be seeing another few losses here and there. And then we got to go into some quick hits. We had Lewis sweeping George Mason on Friday. We had Loyola defeating George Mason on Saturday. Tough weekend for the Patriots, but George Mason's still having a good season. And then, like I said, Hawaii defeated Purdue Fort Wayne last week twice, which actually set a record for the attendance for their men's volleyball team. And Long Beach State dominated Concordia Irvine in the return of Chris Seifert, as well as his assistant coach, who is also a part of Alan Knipe's coaching tree. And I want to say that is that in terms of all of the notable matches from the NCAA men's volleyball world. I know that took over 45 minutes, but there was just a lot that happened. As Drewski says, the education you provide for volleyball is top tier. So I appreciate that, Drewski. Before we do get into a commercial break, I actually do want to give a shout out to Patty Bax, who was also in the chat room, and I actually do want to pass her condolences, as she says, "Hi, Teran, sorry for joining late. I'm still technically working, and I just got a message. My uncle passed away in Pennsylvania. A little insanity at the moment, but I'm going to try to listen in." Well, thank you, Patty, and my condolences to your family, and may your uncle rest in everlasting peace. And you take all the time that you wish, Patty. You know where I am, and I'm only one message away from comforting you and making you feel as better as you can. I know you're going through tough times, but I'm here for you. So there you have it. So we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we have some Pro Volleyball Federation to recap, and we also have some NCAA women's volleyball transfer news, as Ally Batenhorst has found a new home. Let's just say it's on the West Coast. And then we have the NCAA Week 5 men's volleyball preview to go over. So keep it locked here. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hello, sports fans. It's me, your boy Larry B, and I want to walk you through the world of sports. No. Not just the mainstream major TV deal type sports, although those are important too. But let me be your guide through your journey of all sports, from college to the pros, the minors, and everything in between. Each week, we are talking sports galore with true diehards just like you, from a hardcore fan's perspective that's sure to quench your thirst around leagues you may know all too well, and some you may even discover here. That's right, sports fans. If you love sports of all kinds, Enjoy hearing amazing sports stories and respect all sports, because you know how difficult any of them can be to play or compete in, then this is your show. Join me, your boy Larry B, on the defining moment each week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports, and let the sports come to you.
Hello, ladies and sinners. Hello, sports fans around the world. Hello, IE Sports family. This is Cale Henderson, the host of IE Vegas, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio. If you folks are interested in sports in the Vegas area, if you're wanting to have a blast for 1 hour, every Tuesday night from 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, this is a show built for the Vegas sports fans, where we feature the Las Vegas Raiders, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the Las Vegas Aces, and the University of Las Vegas, Nevada Rebels. Hopefully, fingers crossed, MLB team coming soon. Either way, if you folks are looking to have a blast for 1 hour each and every week, tune in Tuesday, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you folks are interested in Vegas sports news, go to our Twitter, at SinCities_IESR, and you can speak with me, the host, Cale Henderson, at Cale_Henderson on Twitter. At any time, be happy to reply. Always willing to reach out to our fans. Again, the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely check out all of our amazing shows, as Adam Karnick, as of this recording, will be going live in about 90 minutes from now. So if you're a Chicago fan in terms of sports, definitely check out Adam Karnick and Chi-Town Weekly. But with all that said and done, let's get on into the second half of our show. So before we get on into Pro Volleyball Federation, there was actually a big transfer that happened this past Saturday. And it happened in the NCAA women's volleyball world. And this was the $1 million question. Where was Ally Batenhorst going to transfer from Nebraska? I actually gave the speculation and bold prediction that she might transfer to Long Beach State if she's not looking at a Power 5 or Power 4 school. Whether just because Long Beach State would reunite her with the likes of Tyler Hildebrand, the former assistant coach at Nebraska, and then she could also partake in the beach program at Long Beach State, because from what I was hearing from Volleyball X, formerly known as Twitter, she wanted to play beach volleyball in addition to indoor volleyball. But Ally Batenhorst actually found her new home, and where she will be attending is... Can we get a drum roll, please? The University of Southern California. So USC in other words. And this is a huge transfer for USC. The fact that USC gets Ally Batenhorst is so big. Just because they lost Skylar Fields to graduation, and they need a big-time cannon of an arm like Batenhorst. Because London Widjay cannot carry that team by herself. She's not even 20 years old. And if you remember, London Widjay literally forwent her senior year of high school just to train with USC women's volleyball. And eventually she got the call to basically aid their team in their NCAA tournament run. So all in all, for USC, this was so huge for them, and landing Ally Batenhorst could not have been any bigger for their program, and they need that Skylar Fields type of player. What I will say is they just can't run her ragged into the ground, and if she does partake in beach volleyball, then that's an even bigger bonus for USC's beach volleyball team. So the fact that USC lands Ally Batenhorst proves that USC is still a hotbed in terms of college volleyball. And she'll still remain in the Big Ten. I am really going to need to get used to saying that. Which, oh man, that's going to be interesting to say the least. But I'm sure that Nebraska will give Ally Batenhorst a nice little warm round of applause and warm little reception. So there you have it. So does this move the needle that USC can win the entire thing? Not really, just because Nebraska is still good. Texas is loaded. I'm not sure about Stanford, but they'll still probably be up there with Aaliyah Rubin and Cami Minor and Julia Blyshov, who should still see some time, just because with Kendall Kipp and Katie Baird having graduated, they'll still be a cut above the rest. So I still think USC is a semi-contender. I could see them making like the round of 32, if not the Sweet 16. But Ally Batenhorst moved the needle a little bit. I still, especially since they're in such a tough conference in the Big Ten, home to Nebraska and Wisconsin and Penn State, and UCLA, Oregon, and Washington doesn't make the conference any easier as well. So, and Purdue is also up there too with their three-headed monster of Eva Hudson and Lourdes Myers and Raven Colvin, etc., etc. So, I'll say USC is going to be good, but I won't say they're not going to be amazing. They're not going to be jaw-dropping like when they had, Nebraska fans, forgive me for saying this name, Mick Haley. It's not like the Mick Haley days where he had Sammy Bricio and Brittany Abercrombie and so on and so forth. But, and Kalia Lanier. Can't forget about Kalia Lanier, the second most kill leader at USC. But you get what I mean. Like, Ally Batenhorst is going to make USC better, but I don't think they're going to... But I don't think USC is going to be up there in terms of like consistent top 25 or certainly not consistent top 20 or 15. But it is still great news for USC fans, and you better watch out for those women of Troy. I think they'll still be up there in terms of decently talented and somewhat scary. So that's going to do it for Ally Batenhorst and the NCAA women's volleyball transfer news. That's kind of the only bit of transfer news because I actually forgot to go over the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll as well as the off-the-block media poll from last week. But we'll circle back to that a little bit later. Let's talk about some Pro Volleyball Federation. So last week was the inaugural week of the Pro Volleyball Federation. It's a women's pro league in North America. I'm sorry if I had to blow up everyone's eardrums on that, but it's a pro women's volleyball league in North America, and it is here to stay. And the best part is that we're going to get League One volleyball next year, and Pro Volleyball Federation is only going to expand because Indiana, Kansas City, and Dallas is going to be partaking in the Pro Volleyball Federation. This year's PVF has 7 teams. Next season, we'll have 10, and it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the action started on Wednesday when the Atlanta Vibe hit the road to the CHI Health Arena Center? CHI Health Arena. It was near near Creighton. There you go. But Atlanta took on the Omaha Supernovas as Atlanta looked like they were going to cruise to a first set victory, but Omaha is so scrappy. And if you were not watching this match live in person, you had to have been watching on that YouTube channel of Pro Volleyball Federation. And I'm also going to say this. It actually helped that the PVF streamed their matches on YouTube. Yes, it's not ultimately convenient, but it's still easier than downloading Stadium or Bally Live. I'm sorry, but I feel like I downloaded that for nothing because now they're going to be streaming it on their YouTube channel. But that's what the NVA does with their matches. I'll be talking about that in a little bit later, but Atlanta took the first set 26-24 despite the Supernovas making a late push, and then the Vibe took the second set 25-23. So I was literally stunned at this. I know Atlanta was chosen to finish second in the Pro Volleyball Federation standings, but I was just baffled because it's volleyball in Omaha/Nebraska is way different than any other state. I'm just going to say that right now. There was 11,624 in attendance. There you have it. But to add on that, Omaha, the Supernovas were not going to let their team lose in front of a massively packed crowd. As Omaha took that third set 25-17, and then the fourth set they took it 25-19. I did not think Omaha was going to go down without a fight. And you literally couldn't have scripted this. The first match in the PVF went 5 sets. And then fifth set, it was just back and forth. And then eventually, Omaha went on a 6-0 run to lead 13-10. So if you're doing your math, so you mathematicians out there, if you're doing your math correctly, Atlanta was up 10-7 at one point in set 5. And then a 6-0 run turned that into a 13-10 lead for the Supernovas. But for the Atlanta Vibe, they responded with that run with a 5-0 run to end the match, and Leah Edmond, the former Kentucky women's volleyball player, put down the kill to give Atlanta the match, the first ever match in PVF history, as this match was everything and more, as Leah Edmond led the way with 27 kills, 17 digs, and 4 blocks. Ally Linehan had 13 kills, 16 digs, and 4 blocks. She also had the first ever point from PVF history. Grace Cleveland had 11 kills. Morgan Hentz had 25 digs and 12 assists. And Tori Dilfer-Stringer had 41 assists and 24 digs. For Omaha, they were led by Brooke Nuneviller, who had 16 kills, 21 digs, and 4 blocks. Danielle Hart had 13 kills, 9 digs. Jess Shaben, if I mispronounce any of these names, I apologize. Jess Shaben Landsman had 12 kills and 7 digs. Bethania De La Cruz had 10 kills, 15 digs, and 4 blocks. Sydney Hilly had 39 assists and 16 digs, and Kendall White had 23 digs to lead Omaha in that department. My overall takeaway from this match is this. You couldn't have asked for a better league opener. This was the match. And the fact that it went 5 is just so amazing. I knew it was going to go 5. For some reason, I knew it was going to go 5. But for Omaha, my takeaway for them is this. They shouldn't really fret about this loss. It's still a long season. They still have plenty of season left. If I recall correctly, they have 24 matches this season. I think each team gets 24 matches. And the fact that they almost beat Atlanta after they were down 0-2, and the fact that they were down 10-7 at one point in set 5, speaks to volumes of how impressive this team is going to be. There's a reason why they were chosen first to finish first in the PVF standings. For Atlanta, ladies and gentlemen, they got him. Okay, I'm overusing that joke, but Atlanta really turned the tide. The fact that they used a 5-0 run, it kind of reminded me of the UCSB-UC Irvine women's volleyball match, except UCSB completed the reverse sweep. UCI did not. No offense, UCI. But the Atlanta Vibe really turned it on in that 5th set. And it just goes to show that volleyball is a game of momentum for the most part. So all in all, for the Vibe, it just goes to show that they are definitely good as advertised, really good as advertised. And once all these teams get healthy, then we're going to really see who they truly have. Next up, we had on Thursday, Grand Rapids Rise taking on the Columbus Fury at the Van Andel Arena. Also, before I continue, I got to give a shout-out on Wednesday to Emily Eamon, who was on the color commentary call, as well as Elena Shklar, good friends of, well, Emily Eamon is a good friend of Set Point, and Elena Shklar is also a good friend of Set Point. But I have to give a shout out to both of them and their contributions to the broadcast as well. As Grand Rapids Rise swept the Columbus Fury 25-17, 25-23, and 25-19. The Grand Rapids Rise were led by the one, the only Claire Chaussee, who had 21 kills, 10 digs, and 2 aces. Ladies and gentlemen, we found her. We found her. Claire Chaussee is her. She had 21 kills in a 3-set match. That's 7 kills per set. She also had 10 digs in a 3-set win. And she also had 2 aces. She is still the Claire Chaussee that she was at Louisville. Emilia Dimitrova, yeah, that sounds right. Emilia Dimitrova had 12 kills, 8 digs, and 4 blocks. Sarah Sponsel, the former AVP player, she had 16 digs, and Ashley Evans had 36 assists and 7 digs. For the Columbus Fury, they were led by Reagan Cooper, who had 9 kills and 3 digs. Caitlin Horde had 8 kills and 3 digs. Valeria Leon had 13 digs, and Priscilla Maria Schlegel had 10 digs. And Jen B., who is a Columbus native and the host of our Cleveland show, Show of the Land, said she was amazing, referring to Claire Chaussee. And indeed she was. And my takeaway for Grand Rapids Rise is this: when you're holding your opponent to, any of your opponent's players to less than 10 kills, your defense was on point. And I thought that was what Grand Rapids Rise did. And for Sarah Sponsel, keep in mind she's a beach volleyball player, but she did play indoors at, I think it was UCLA and LMU. So the fact that Sarah Sponsel had that great of a night in her first indoor women's match since God knows when, maybe 2016, just shows that she still has it in her. For the Columbus Fury, my takeaway for them is this: they weren't bad, but Reagan Cooper leading the way, it was good. Caitlin Horde was also good as well, but they need to have more explosive nights than that. They need to have more. Their offense needs to be more explosive than that. I'm not trying to say that Grand Rapids Rise just clobbered Columbus Fury, but I felt a little bit underwhelmed from Columbus Fury. I thought they were at least going to push this match to 4, but that second set was kind of the window that closed on them. So, unfortunately, this was a tough one for the Columbus Fury, but just like Omaha, this is only one loss. The season is still long, and they'll have a week to figure it out because they actually have a bye this week. Then lastly, we have the final match, which took the longest of the 3. By the way, there was like over 7,300 some at the Van Handel Arena in Michigan. So you got to take that into consideration. But lastly, on Friday, we had the Atlanta Vibe taking on the Orlando Valkyries. Now, Atlanta was dinged up. And I should also mention Columbus Fury did not have the likes of Asia O'Neal and Jenna Rosenthal, and the list goes on and on. But honestly, this Orlando Valkyries versus Atlanta Vibe match, it was pretty darn good. Pretty good, if you ask me. And Jen B says hopefully Asia O'Neal will be playing next match. I hope so too. And yeah, Jenna Rosenthal and Asia O'Neal, I hope they will be playing as well, because I really want to see all these players play for their respective teams. As Mike pops into the chat room, he says, Teran, sorry I missed most of the show. I know it was great. Thanks, Mike. But the Atlanta Vibe took on the Orlando Valkyries at the Addition Financial Arena, which is in Orlando, which pretty much is near UCF. But first set went to Orlando. They won it 25-20. And I actually have to give a shout-out to @AvidVolley on X, formerly known as Twitter. He made a good point that Atlanta was so gassed and looked tired. And that is definitely true, just because they were on the road in Omaha, Nebraska, and then they had to travel down south to Orlando, Florida, and they only got one day of like rest and practice and whatnot. Heck, I don't even know if they practiced, because that might have been a travel day for them, and you can't, unless they don't apply that rule like the NCAA does. And sorry, I accidentally hit my desk. But Atlanta just looked tired in that first set. They looked a little tired in that second set, as they needed everything and more to win that second set, 27-25. And then the third set, the Vibe won that one, 27-25. Orlando had its chances, but unfortunately just could not put its foot down. But they pushed the match to 5 by taking set 4, 25-16. And then set 5, it was just a back-and-forth match until Atlanta kind of broke a 10-10 tie, I want to say it was. Either way, they really stepped it up once they hit the red zone, as they won that fifth set 15-12, winning the match. Atlanta had 3 different players with 10 kills, as Leah Edmond, Karis Watson, and Yassiana Presley all had 10 kills. Presley had 8 digs and 7 blocks, and Leah Edmond also chipped in 19 digs. Allie Linehan had 7 kills and 23 digs to lead that department. Shelly Fanning had 8 kills. Morgan Hens had 20 digs. Marley Montrez had 19 assists and 11 digs, and Tori Dilfer Stringer had 20 assists and 8 digs. Orlando was led by Adora Anea, who had 18 kills and 19 digs. Jill Gillen, everyone's favorite Arkansas Razorback, had 15 kills, 14 digs, and 4 blocks. Georgia Murphy had 21 digs, and Wilma Rivera had 6 kills, 39 assists, and 11 digs. My takeaway from this match is this. Another amazing matchup, as Atlanta pulled out an amazing win on the road, and they deserve a nice little rest. But it's not going to be a long rest, as they have a match this week, and honestly, it's going to be, I wouldn't say it's going to be an intense match. They're not going to be playing Omaha, but they'll finally get to play a match at home. For Orlando, they definitely didn't look bad, especially with the likes of like Jill Gillen, who was coming straight off of her final collegiate year at Arkansas, as she looked very good, and she is still the Jill Gillen that everyone thought she was going to be. Especially when she has 4 blocks. Keep in mind, she's only 5'7", and she jumps like a freaking kangaroo or a pogo stick. But all in all, for Orlando, this is one of those live and learn matches. Atlanta obviously looked tired, but they at least had a match under their belt. Now, this begs the question. If Atlanta didn't have that first match against Omaha under their belt, would they have beaten Orlando? That's a food for thought question, but it's one of those questions where it's never going to get answered. But at the same time, Orlando looked pretty good for their season opener. It's just all about, you just got to remember, Atlanta is basically that team, along with Omaha. So, there you have it. All right, but that is that for Week 1's preview, or Week 1's recap. Now, for this week, we have only two matches, which makes me sad face, but it's all good. So the action actually gets started on Thursday, February 1st, when the San Diego Mojo, who's making their inaugural debut, hits the road to Gas South Arena to take on the Atlanta Vibe. And then that's not the only match that the San Diego Mojo have. They actually travel to the CHI Health Center, a.k.a. Volleyball Land, a.k.a. Nebraska, to take on the Omaha Supernovas. Contrary to what I'm hearing, the matches are going to be played on Stadium, which is the Atlanta match, and Bally Live. But from what I'm also hearing is that the Pro Volleyball Federation is going to be streaming their matches on their YouTube page, which is cool. So last week, if you all remember, I basically introduced all but a few of the rosters. I think I introduced 5 rosters out of the 7. Now it's time to introduce the San Diego Mojo roster. And something I did last night is that I actually rewatched the Key and Peele skits, and it kind of reminded me what I did last week. So unfortunately, I don't have any of the Key and Peele music that they did in the whole East versus West collegiate football skit. But try to imagine there's when the actual guitar, not just me saying that, but imagine the whole Key and Peele skit when I this Key and Peele skit music when I introduced the San Diego Mojo. So here is the San Diego Mojo roster. We have August Rasky, setter from Oregon. Shara Marie Venegas Medina, libero from Universidad Metropolitana. Kendra Dalkey, outside hitter from Arizona. Hannah Tapp, middle blocker from Minnesota. Veronica Stone, middle blocker from Oregon. Grace Loberg, outside hitter from Wisconsin. Allison Bastianelli, middle blocker from Illinois. Valeria Papa. It doesn't show the college. Nutsara Tomcom, RBAC. Lindsay Stalzer, opposite hitter from Bradley. Temi Thomas Ilara, outside hitter from Northwestern and Wisconsin. Nomaris Velez Agosto, libero from Interamericana, Puerto Rico. Morgan Lewis, opposite hitter from Oregon. Carson Bacon, middle blocker from Oregon. Genesis Colazo Vasquez, outside hitter from Universidad Metropolitana, or UMet. And that's that for their roster. Their head coach is Taiba Hanif Park, and their assistant coach is Dietrich Collins Parker, as well as Nali Mon. If I butchered any of these names, I do apologize. I promise you I'm not doing it on purpose, but there needs to be a pronunciation guide. But that is the San Diego Mojo roster, as they have two big matches on the road. And I wish one of those matches was home. But then again, I'd have to forego my plans on Saturday probably, which I have plans to do. All right, but anyway, it's going to be a little tough to beat those teams just because San Diego was slated to finish, I think, 5th ahead of Orlando and Las Vegas. And they're facing the second best team from the preseason poll and the first best team from the preseason poll, especially since one of those teams is 2-0. And that second match, they were gassed, but they actually won that one. And then Omaha, obviously, is going to come out with a vengeance. So I hope that San Diego can give Omaha and Atlanta a run for their money, but I don't know. Next week, the Las Vegas Thrill will play, and thankfully we will get to introduce them, which I think is going to be fun times. And then on Monday, February 12th, is actually going to be the first time there will be double days, as, oh gosh, that's going to get in the way of me doing set point if the match goes 2 hours plus, which it probably will. All right, but that is going to do it for the Pro Volleyball Federation. All in all, I'm just going to say this, and I said this a million times on X, formerly known as Twitter. Pro women's volleyball is here to stay in North America, and it's thanks to the Pro Volleyball Federation. And the best part is that they're going to get all their kinks ironed out, all their glitches fixed up, all the camera angles good, and the sound good, and whatnot. So volleyball, if you all saw, is actually one of the more fastest growing sports. And it's definitely showing just because now NCAA women's volleyball players, they don't have to say, oh, I don't want to go international, I'll just figure out something else. They can go play pro in North America. And especially when League One volleyball is going to be happening next year. You got to take that into consideration as well. So, 2 big thumbs up for Pro Volleyball Federation and how they just hit a home run with their first week. They got really good broadcasts. They got Maddie Fitzpatrick on the broadcast for color commentary. Like I said, they got Emily Eamon and Elena Sklar from the Big Ten Network. So, all in all, it's going to be fun times going forward for Pro Volleyball Federation. All right, but that's going to do it for the Pro Volleyball Federation portion of the show. Now let's jump on back into some NCAA men's volleyball as, well, I forgot to do the AVCA coaches poll, and I ultimately regret it. But the AVCA coaches poll for this week, 20 through 16 consists of Lincoln Memorial at 20, UC San Diego at 19, George Mason at 18, CSUN at 17, and Princeton at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Ball State at 15, Lewis at 14, USC and UC Santa Barbara, both at 12, and Loyola Chicago at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Pepperdine at 10, BYU at 9, Penn State at 8, UC Irvine at 7, Ohio State at 6. 5 through 1 consists of UCLA at 5, Stanford at 4, Hawaii at 3, Grand Canyon at 2, and your new number 1 team that garnered all the first place votes in the AVCA/NVA men's volleyball coaches poll is Long Beach State. So I have a lot of questions for this. Penn State only moved up 1 spot despite beating the number 1 team in the nation last week twice. I get it. The first matchup, Ohio State didn't have Jacob Pastor. But I still find that a little ridiculous. That's why I gave Penn State my team of the week. Because, again, I was going to give it to UC Irvine or maybe UC Santa Barbara. But the Nittany Lions defeated Ohio State twice. One of which was on the road. Which I know Jacob Pastor didn't play in that match. But still, that's a little bit disrespectful for Penn State. Ohio State, as we saw, they dropped from 1 all the way down to 6. UC Irvine didn't move at all. That could change when they play UCLA. Pepperdine stayed the same at 10. BYU stayed the same at 9. Or actually, yeah, BYU actually moved down because Penn State won and they moved up, even though it was only 1 spot. Lincoln Memorial, they're back in the top 20 as they knocked out Charleston of West Virginia. Long Beach State, everyone is saying Long Beach State doesn't deserve to be doesn't deserve to be number 1. First and foremost, that win over Pepperdine was kind of convincing. Second and foremost, I know they have struggled against I know they had dropped a set against St. Francis, George Mason, and JIT. But still, they still won those games, right? So, all in all for Long Beach State, I think they definitely deserve to be number 1. They have the roster that definitely proves to be number 1. They've got Mason Briggs, Clark Godbold, Sotir Shiapanis, Aiden Knipe, Lazar Buchkalov. The list goes on and on. Simon Torwey. Long Beach State is stacked this year. I would not be surprised if Long Beach State wound up winning the whole thing. Because one more thing to remember is that Long Beach State hosts the NCAA men's volleyball tournament. And it's going to be an 18 tournament as well. They expanded the tournament field, and I think they have one more automatic qualifier to go along with the Conference of Carolinas, the EIVA, the MIVA, and the Big West. Oh, and the MPSF. So it's actually 6 automatic qualifiers. It's Conference of Carolinas, Big West, MPSF, EIVA, MIVA, and I think it's the NEC, I want to say. If I'm mistaken, that I apologize, but I want to say it's the NEC, but it could also be one of the other new-founded conferences, but I will get confirmation of that next week. So, again, 6 automatic qualifiers and then 2 at-larges. Just goes to show that margin of error is still very slim. All right, but that's that for the AVCA men's volleyball coaches poll. Now let's jump on into last week's off-the-block national media poll. So, it's a little outdated, but if you saw on Off the Block website or on Instagram or my Instagram story, the Off the Block national media poll was Pepperdine at 10, Penn State at 9, UC Irvine at BYU tied for 7th, Stanford at 6. 5 through 1 was Grand Canyon at 5, Hawaii at 4, UCLA at 3, Long Beach State at 2, just barely, and then Ohio State at 1. So I understand why people wanted to vote Ohio State, but here's the thing. I did not vote Ohio State at number 1. Here's who I voted for. Long Beach State at number 1, UCLA at number 2, Ohio State at number 3, Hawaii at number 4, Stanford at number 5, Grand Canyon at 6, Penn State at 7, UC Irvine at 8, BYU at 9, and USC at 10. I'm very surprised USC did not. I mean, they got votes, but they are not in the top 10, even after posting a solid win over Ball State, even after pushing Ohio State to 5? For real? Come on. I think USC deserves a little bit of love. I mean, not for this week, but still, they deserve some love for... I mean, they received 3 votes, but that didn't really move the needle to the point where they get ranked. But I had Long Beach State at number 1 just because, yes, Long Beach State has not beaten anyone of noteworthiness. Yes, Ohio State just beat the number 1 team in the nation. But remember, Ohio State needed a reverse sweep to beat UCLA. They needed everything and more from all of their players in terms of their kills to basically beat USC, who almost backdoor swept them. And then look at what happened this week. Ohio State was number 1, and then they lost to Penn State, which was number 9, which was coming off of 2 losses to UCLA and Stanford. That's kind of the reason why I put Long Beach State at number 1 instead of Ohio State. Now, I could have put Ohio State at number 2, but I still don't think that I was overly convinced at Ohio State, because remember, they struggled against the likes of Damon, St. Francis, UC San Diego. That's why I kind of was skeptical at putting Ohio State at number 1 instead of putting them at number 3. Or as opposed to putting them at number 3. So, all in all for Ohio State, I think they're still a good team, especially once Jacob Pastor gets healthy. But I don't know if they're on the level of Long Beach State. They're not going to be playing each other this season, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And we'll see UCLA and USC play the likes of Penn State and Ohio State in the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge. Next year, it's probably going to be called the Big Ten Challenge, just because even though USC is not in the Big Ten in men's volleyball as well as UCLA, it still can be, which I actually need to go over something. Before I go... Actually, no, I'll save that for later. But as for my ballot for this week's Off the Block media poll, here's who I voted for. I voted Pepperdine at 10, BYU at 9, UC Irvine at 8, Grand Canyon 7, Penn State 6, UCLA 5, Ohio State 4, Stanford 3, Hawaii 2, and Long Beach State number 1. Will it be the same as the Off the Block media poll altogether? You'll have to find that out tomorrow. Because as of this recording, this is being recorded on Monday, the Off the Block media poll gets posted on every Tuesday. So that is that for the Off the Block media poll altogether. And before I continue, I actually do want to make note of something that was brought up to me. And this is courtesy of one of my followers on X, formerly known as Twitter, Ryan Chapman, as he says Big Ten men. He wanted to have a Big Ten men's volleyball, and he said it would be a great conference. So here would be the locks according to him. Ohio State, Penn State, UCLA, and USC. Those are kind of the general teams from all the other conferences. Maybe not softball or baseball, but I digress. And then Purdue-Fort Wayne would be locks. For men's volleyball, that would be the Big Ten men's volleyball conference. And then the additions would be BYU. That's kind of a reach right there. Ball State, Loyola Chicago, Lewis, and then their 10th team would probably be Lindenwood. He says Lindenwood with a question mark. Now, I really like that list. It's actually not a bad list if you ask me. My only thing is BYU is a little out there. If it were me, I'd maybe pick... Lindenwood is probably the best between them and McKendree. McKendree and Quincy. But, it's actually not a bad list. It's actually a good effort, if you ask me. A Big Ten men's volleyball conference would be quite something, if you ask me. They're not going to add any of the Big West, because the Big West is off limits. That is their own thing. Do not touch that conference. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. So I actually like this list quite a bit, and it's actually a good effort on their part. I just don't think the Big Ten is going to want to basically have that. And like I said, the only thing that the Big Ten is missing is Emily Eman covering those games either on the broadcast or on the sidelines. But all in all, for the Big Ten, from my follower, Ryan Chapman, it's actually a pretty solid list, if you ask me. And it's actually good creativity. I just don't think everyone's going to be all in for it just because they like their NCAA women's volleyball, which is sad face. NCAA men's volleyball, like I said, they deserve the recognition and love that NCAA women's volleyball gets. They deserve their matches to be nationally televised. They deserve the promotion that they need as well. They don't deserve anything. They deserve the fifth set like NCAA women's volleyball had for their national tournament. The list goes on and on. But all in all, that is basically that for that little bit of news right there. Now, to close out the show, we have we have a couple more things to go, and then I'll let you all go. We have the NCAA men's volleyball matches to watch for in Week 5. It's not a whole big list. It's not as big of a list as it was last week, but there are still 11 ranked-on-ranked matches. And it's going, well, actually 10 ranked-on-ranked matches. Sorry, I was bad at math. So the action starts on Wednesday when UC Santa Barbara, tied for number 12 UC Santa Barbara, heads down to number 16 Princeton. All right, Princeton needs a little bit of a prove-yourself win. This is probably their best chance because UC Santa Barbara is super young, but they're looking so more crisp by the day. Princeton, I think, can win this match just because it's their first home match, and they have Ben Harrington and Nairo Omene, as well as the Setter Wedbush and the list, and Ryan Venna, and the list goes on and on. And honestly, it's such a long trip for UC Santa Barbara, and it's going to be their first true road trip. Most of their matches have been at home in the Thunderdome, if not whatever their gymnasium is called. I think it's called Rob Gym. But now they get a true road test against Princeton. And even though Princeton is ranked number 16 below UC Santa Barbara, I would not be surprised if the Tigers wound up winning this matchup. I think Princeton definitely has a lot of upside to their team, and Sam Schweisky is a fantastic coach. Not trying to say anything bad about UC Santa Barbara, but Princeton needs a statement win, and this is probably the match. Also on Wednesday, number 5 UCLA heads down to Orange County to take on number 7 UC Irvine. This is my match/series of the week, as the two teams are also playing each other on Friday at Poly Pavilion. But John Speraw heads back to his semi-old stomping grounds as his Bruins take on UC Irvine. Now, this is the reason why I have this as match/series of the week. UC Irvine is coming off of 2 wins, and ever since they lost to George Mason in their first match, they haven't lost ever since. Again, I think that the matchup against George Mason was kind of a little bit of an, I wouldn't say mismatch, but George Mason had matches underneath their belt. UC Irvine was kind of going on cold turkey, still trying to figure out who their setter was between Joe Carlos and Brett Sheward. But now UC Irvine has found its swagger, and honestly, this is going to be a barn burner. The big thing is that UC Irvine is playing its first match in the Bren Event Center, and thank you, UC Irvine, for moving your matches from Crawford Hall to the Bren Event Center. Nothing against Crawford Hall, but the Bren is so much more, what's the word? Luxurious and more spacious. And also, it's one of the top facilities in terms of California for volleyball. And I think they'll also be playing on Terraflex. Though I think they would be playing on Terraflex in Crawford Hall. But regardless, UCLA versus UC Irvine, a top 10 matchup, which I think is going to be super, super fun. I think it's the only top 5 matchup or top 10 matchup versus top 10 matchup we have this week. Then we have on Wednesday, tied for number 12 USC taking on number 19 UC San Diego in La Jolla, or Lion Shree Arena. That's still going to be tough to remember off the top of my head. But this is going to be an interesting matchup. USC got punched in the mouth by CSUN, and now they face another Big West opponent in UC San Diego. And it doesn't get easier for USC, because next week they've got UC Irvine. But looking at this week, because as Jeff Nygaard would say, this week is the next match is what truly matters, and not anything. Everything else does not matter. USC needs to bounce back in a big way. Yes, they beat Central State, but come on. USC was not losing that one. For UC San Diego, if they're going to get a big win, now would be the time, because USC, I wouldn't say they got exposed against CSUN, but I will say, like I told Jeff Nygaard, the Big West Conference is so stacked. If I were a gambling man, I'd probably put money on USC, but do not count out UC San Diego. Gamble responsibly, by the way. So for the Trojans, if they somehow lose, then I think it would be time to start questioning them. The two also play on Friday at the Galen Center at USC, but as I mentioned, Wednesday is what truly matters for USC, and they really need to pull out a nice little win right here, especially on the road. Next up, we have also on Wednesday the first conference match from what I've seen. Number 14 Lewis heads hits the road to take on Lindenwood. This is actually the first conference match for any conference. This is the first conference match in NCAA men's volleyball. That's why I have it as a match to watch for. All right, Lewis is coming off of a not-so-good loss over LIU as they take on Lindenwood. I'm going to be honest, don't be surprised if Lindenwood wins this matchup. Lindenwood is catching Lewis on a little bit of a, I wouldn't say bad night, but they're catching him off of a tough 4-set loss to LIU. I think Lindenwood could definitely win this matchup, but if I'm choosing with logic, I'm picking Lewis. I think Lewis definitely has that it factor. I definitely think they have the players. Obviously, they didn't lose too much, but I will say Lewis can definitely win this matchup. But again, don't be surprised if Lindenwood wins, just because Lindenwood does have some studs on their team. So there you have it right there. Speaking of MIVA play, we have on Thursday, number 11 Loyola Chicago takes on number 15 Ball State. All right, this is the battle of two teams still trying to prove themselves. Ball State is still looking for that big breakout win, while Loyola is still in search of another big breakout win after they beat Hawaii. That's kind of the only thing they have to show for it. I mean, they beat George Mason last week, but they had to beat him in 4. So I think this matchup can go either way. Loyola is definitely seeing the benefit of their young players, while Ball State is seeing the return of Tanashi Ndava-Zocheva for his third week back. I think Ball State can definitely protect home court. As long as they don't let Parker Van Buren get hot, and as long as they pass the ball well at the service line, I think Ball State definitely has a shot. But Loyola, they know that they can't afford a loss, and they can't afford to start 0-1, especially since they're facing a quality opponent. But I think we're in for a barn burner. I would not be surprised if this matchup went 5 sets. And then Friday, we have a full slate. We have number 10 Pepperdine heading down to New York to take on number 16 Princeton, or actually New Jersey to take on number 16 Princeton. All right, this is going to be a fun matchup right here. Pepperdine now has a chance to bounce back after they got punched in the mouth big time by Long Beach State. But here's the thing. Princeton is not going to lie down and fork over the win to Pepperdine. Pepperdine actually has to have a great solid effort. They cannot play with multiple back row attacker violations. I forgot to mention, in that Long Beach State Pepperdine match, Pepperdine had so many back row attacker violations. I was just baffled by it. How do you have this many back row attacker violations? I lost count of how many back row attacker violations they had, but you just can't have that against a quality team like Long Beach State. So for Pepperdine, they really have to cross their T's and dot their I's, and they really have to show that they deserve to be a top 10 team. Because if Princeton wins, they're out of that top 10 for sure. And Princeton, I think, can definitely win one, if not both of their matches this week. Also on Friday, we have number 8 Penn State heading down to Muncie to take on number 15 Ball State. This is a big week for Ball State, not going to lie. Loyola the day before this matchup, and Penn State that day. And Penn State's coming off of 2 amazing wins over then number 1 Ohio State. Don't be surprised if Penn State actually wins this matchup. I mean, number 8 versus number 15. Obviously, Penn State should win this one, but Ball State does have some studs. Tanashi Ndava-Zocheva, he's a stud. Venice Buckles, he's a stud. Patrick Rogers, he's also a stud. So, all in all, for Ball State, they can win this matchup, but don't be surprised if Penn State does win handily, especially if they run a 6-2 or a 5-1. I think Penn State kind of has its mojo back after getting punched in the mouth by UCLA and Stanford. Next up, we have number 19, UC San Diego, tied for number 12, USC. Like I mentioned, it's a big series for USC, and my big thing for USC this week, they can't look ahead. If USC looks ahead to next week against UC Irvine, they might lose one, if not both of these matches. But as long as they get Wes Smith involved, they should be good. Please, USC, please get Wes Smith involved. He does so good in the middle. Now, unless USC is struggles with passing and struggles with getting the ball and running the middle, I can understand that, but you gotta have Wes Smith just doing his thing. Also, we have number 7 UC Irvine at number 5 UCLA. Like I mentioned, it's the match and series of the week, in my opinion, as it's another top 10 matchup between those two teams. And if the UCI actually wins at UCLA, I will be generally impressed. I think UC Irvine's going to need a lot in order to beat UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. But UCLA just cannot play with mistakes. If UCLA makes mistakes and they have a high number of missed serves and they let Halir Heno go off and they just don't serve and pass well, then UCLA I could see losing. But UC Irvine's going to need to play their best match of its lifetime. And then also on Saturday and Friday, we have number 17 CSUN, or Cal State Northridge, heading down to Northern California to take on number 3 Stanford. All right, Stanford, you had a week off, and you jumped to number 3 in the AVCA coaches poll. And you've earned my respect, too. But now you face a CSUN team coming off of a huge win over USC, and honestly, Theo Edwards' team is ready to go. And like I mentioned, CSUN, they didn't lose anyone too big to graduation. I think for me, CSUN, despite what their ranking shows, despite what their record shows, I think CSUN is a solid team. You just cannot afford to basically underestimate the Matadors. I think them being chosen to finish tied for 5th in the Big West also doesn't give them any justice. I think that CSUN is definitely a strong team, and they have strong players. Kyle Hobus is definitely a man on a mission, as well as, I think his name is Kyle Phillips, and also you have Griffin Walters, who's definitely up there in talent as well. Also, keep an eye on Neil Finnegan. I say that in a biased manner, but Neil Finnegan is a middle blocker, and I did cover him at OCC last season, but I will also say Jalen Phillips, my bad. Why did I say Kyle Phillips? I was getting Kyle Hobus and Jalen Phillips' name mixed up. But Jalen Phillips is definitely could be a name to watch for, as well as Griffin Walters. But all in all, CSUN, they're so underrated. I think this year, I'm surprised they only moved up one spot. I think they should have moved up a few more. But it's just kind of tough when everyone is winning and losing, and there's a lot of movement in the AVCA coaches poll. So there you have it. All right, but that is that for the Week 5 matches to watch for. Before I get on out of here, I have to have some NBA news because I am your one-stop shop for all things NBA news. So if you all did not watch the Set Point Extra Points, shame on you. But I'll be posting a link to that later on in the day, if not maybe tomorrow. But Nick England and the San Diego Wild had their season opening scrimmage against San Diego Miramar Jets, and the Wild definitely took care of business against the Jets, unofficially winning in 3 sets. Now, San Diego Wild is back in action with another scrimmage as they'll be playing at Miramar College against the Los Angeles Blaze, which is another NBA team. And ladies and gentlemen, we got them. We finally got some more NBA teams to have more scrimmages. And I really wish I didn't have plans on Saturday. Otherwise, I'd attempt to make it down to San Diego to watch the Miramar versus San Diego Wild match. But I will also just say, if you're in the San Diego area and you're a Los Angeles Blaze / San Diego Wild fan, definitely go attend and support those teams. They definitely deserve it. And that's three teams that'll have had a scrimmage. We had the San Diego Wild, we had the Philadelphia Founders, who scrimmaged against Fairleigh Dickinson and a few other teams, and then 3 other NCAA men's volleyball teams, and then we have the Los Angeles Blaze, who's dipped their toe in terms of scrimmages. And I'm really excited, and I'm hoping we'll get to... I said that last week the NBA would be starting in May, but Nick said that they'd be starting in April. I'm hoping it's April because if the NBA starts the season in May, that's going to intertwine with the NCAA men's volleyball tournament being held at Long Beach State, and that's not going to be ideal, especially if they don't have their play-by-play crew and their live stream crew. But all in all, that's kind of that for the NBA. And then closing out, we have some 3C2A men's volleyball news as the season actually got started last Friday with Golden West taking down Moore Park in 5 sets. It was almost a reverse sweep, but Golden West woke up and just dominated the 5th set once they hit 10 points. I'll be at Orange Coast College to see reigning champion Orange Coast taking on El Camino and Long Beach City. And Irvine Valley will also be playing as well. All right, but that's going to do it for the 3C2A as well as the NVA. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. It is time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate everybody tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen at work, I appreciate you. If you listen at any time, any place, anywhere, I definitely appreciate you. I love your support that you all give me. It means a lot. It keeps me going. Shout out to the chat room. It's Drewski, Mike Pat, Jen B, Patty Bax, Feel Better, Patty, Ralph Calise, and Larry B for all popping in. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in. I will be back on my normal time next Monday. I will be back at my normal 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're on the East Coast, I feel bad for you, and I'm sorry, but 6 p.m. is kind of the more ideal time for me, as opposed to like 4 p.m. where everyone is still probably working. 4 p.m. Central. But for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. I will see you all on Wednesday for UCLA at UC Irvine in men's volleyball. I'll see you all on Friday for King at Long Beach State. And I'll see you all Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!